everybody. Michelle Houghton here. I am pleased and excited to be sharing some new images from Sandy Boone. And if you are a follower of three room studios, you probably already know this. But Sandy has been doing a flower a week. So Flower Fridays. They are digital images, so mine are all on wonky shaped pieces of paper because I put them all on a single 8.5 by 11, and then I've cut them all out, and they weren't nicely arranged in the four corners. I had 5 on there, so I have a funny one that got cut out of the center of the page. Anyway, she has these beautiful, beautiful images, beautiful clean lines. Because they are digital, you could adjust these and make them no line by changing the opacity of the lines. Anyway, beautiful images. If you are into flowers, these are gorgeous ones to color. I am going to be playing with a pansy, and one of the reasons I haven't colored a pansy in forever. And then look at the options. I mean, this really tiny smattering. The color variation on pansies is huge. And then just some of these close-ups this is stunning. But I thought I'd do a little bit more what I think of in my head as a pansy, which is some of those yellows and purples or violets in the Copic world. So I'm going to do this one is what I'm aiming for. And I've already done a little bit of color testing. And this is what I discovered, and I didn't even think of this. One of the color, finding your Copic colors that I'm doing on Friday on my Facebook page had this really bright, rich violet that I struggled with. I was trying blue violets, I was trying underline red violets, and this whole combination stuff. There is a fluorescent violet, FV2, that gets right into that color combination. Has that little bit more blue than the violets, not as much gray as the blue violets. I mean, it's right in there. So this real fun combination that it goes from those kind of pinky purples into this real blue purple and real dark colors. So mine won't look exactly like this. I'm not going to try to put quite that much detail in there, but I'm going to put a lot. So especially this one kind of facing forward, and this little guy too, we can see some of those. So anyway, I thought that would be fun. We'll do some really simple yellow-green combination on the leaves and the stems. So keep that really, really simple. And I have a blue, a B000 for just some background, kind of blow that out just a little bit. I'm not trying to put a horizon or a scene, just give it a little bit of that background. All right, so I'm going to keep this close by, but I definitely want to get close for you guys so you can see what I'm doing. And I'll try to keep an eye on it so we don't fall off. All right, so I'm going to start with those yellows. They come from the interior out, and I am starting with a Y11. This is called Pale Yellow. And it really goes right into the core of the flower, and it comes out a little bit further on each of the petals. And it doesn't come as far out on these guys, so we're going to keep that a little bit closer in. So it's just kind of that underline, just like that, I think. And then I've got a Y13, which is lemon yellow. And because I'm working pretty quick, I'm probably not going to need to blend these together. They're just going to do that blending work on their own. Now notice I'm leaving a little white here in the center. I'm purposefully doing that. I'm going to see if I can kind of frame that out here at the end a little bit, but I feel like that's gonna do what I want it to. Sorry, that was a yellow Y18, which is, wow, lightning If I'm reading that correctly, my eyeball's not focusing correctly. Lightning yellow. All right. Then I'm going to take my lightest violet that I brought over, and it's actually a V05. Yeah, V05. And that one, I'm going to come from the outer edge, and I'm going to flick inward, kind of almost like, you know, we talk about feather blending, where you go with one color out and the other color back in. So this is this V05 Marigold. Really? Marigold? Okay. I've started saying the name because I had a couple requests for it on the videos. And I've been confounded by them, a few of them. I'm like, really? This is what we're calling this? Okay. So I'm going to really just focus on these 4 petals to start. Now, that really covered up some of that yellow. So don't worry, we're going to come back and we're going to come this opposite direction on those. Because in the photo, it has this unusual, it really does, they kind of run into each other and overlap into each other. So let's grab that lightest yellow again, the Y11, and we're going to push out on that. And the beauty of this is that Y11 is got quite a bit of the alcohol solution in it in comparison to that violet. So it's going to push at that. It's going to push it back. And that is what we are going for. Kind of push at, and look at what it's doing, that real neat kind of variegated look. Love it. Okay. Then, so that was, we've got that happening, but now we need to add, let's see, let's jump. We're going to jump a little bit doing some testing here. It's not going to be perfect right from the get-go. This is V06, and I'm going to go up a little bit higher on the tip of the nib, so I'm not all the way on my side anymore, and I'm still flicking in. But that way I'm going to end up with these like narrower flicks versus those wide flicks, and see how it's creating these little fingers into the yellow. I'm actually going for that. I want that look. Okay. Now on these bigger ones to the back, the ones that are sitting a little bit higher on the flower, I think I just fell off, sorry. These guys that are sitting upper ones, they do not have as much yellow, so I'm going to have to bring that down a little bit further. Go ahead and spin your flower, making sure your hand is working in the direction it wants to. So if it's not working, flicking down for you today, make sure you spin it so you can get those flicks going in a direction that it wants. And on these two, there's much less of that yellow showing, so we're bringing that in a little bit tighter. Okay, so that was V06 lavender. Then I'm going to find my fluorescent. So this is FV2, fluorescent dull violet. And this color is going to come right in, kind of above that yellow. Doesn't go all the way out to the edge. You could push it all the way out to the edge, but we're going to try this first. So I'm going to give a little bit of space. So we still see that V04 and V06. But then I'm going to create this kind of band, and I'm just going real lightly back and forth with the tip of my marker. So I'm way up on that brush nib now, going back and forth. Okay. And then the last one is a V09. And that is going to come in from that outer edge. It doesn't need to go all the way out because we have some little spots that end up with that lighter color. And we're going to have to do a little bit of blending, but I think this is going to get those colors where I want them primarily. We'll see. We'll take a peek at our photo here and make a little check. Let's see if this is going where we want it to. So we've got the yellows on the interior. We've got these kind of almost red violets right on the outer edge of those yellows, and then it gets into that really bright, bold color and then darker. But holding on to some of those lighter tones on those edges. So I think let's do a couple things. We're going to jump back. And there might be a better order to do this in too. So we might, on this next one, we could play with that a little bit, but I'm going to try going all the way back to my V06 and softening that outer edge and the inner edge. But I'm wondering if I should have done that other first. I think I should have. I'm going to try that fluorescent, get that right in that little, because that could blend into, there we go. Let's get this blended in first. So we're going to blend that into that darker V09. Okay. And then I'm going to jump all the way down to the V05. I think I said it wrong a little earlier. We are not using a V04 this time. So this one is our lightest, which is the V05, coming along that outer edge, softening that effect into the darker V09. What I've lost a little bit is some of that yellow. So let's see what we can do if we go back to our lightest. This is going to be hard because we've got a lot of violet down there now. And yellow just does not have a whole lot of punch in comparison to violet. So we'll see. So I am using the tip of that brush nib to kind of push out, almost like if you're creating kind of stripes or bands with the colorless blender. I'm going to push out into those violets. A little more general push on these upper ones because we know we don't need it to go quite as far. I'm going to come one more time with my Y18 and deepen that up just a little bit at the center. So I think on this little guy, I think this is pretty done in here. If I want to, I could come back with that darkest, that V09, and add a little bit of that detail. And Sandy has hinted at that in her artwork, so I could do that if I want. That's kind of up to me. Let's see where it ends up. So I think on these petals that are to the back, really on these back ones, it looks like we really only see the violets. So in this case, let's do this. Let's start with our darkest, where it's coming up and out. So this is that V09. And let's try a little dark to light. So V09. Kind of maybe from the core of the flower and flicking out toward the edges of the petal. We have a tiny bit, I think. We're not going to see as much of this, of that fluorescent, but that's that in-between color that's going to really ramp up those blue, really kind of glowing blues in the middle. And we don't see as much of that on these outer ones, so we don't need a whole lot of that, and we're going to come literally right over it with V06, which is going to tone it down. And on these back ones, I do think that's what we're going to want. Not quite as mesmerizing, not quite as bright out here, so blending as we go, really softening that color. And then the last one out on these edges is that V05. And that definitely worked a little better. So I think we need to look at doing a little bit of dark to light and figuring out how to keep hold of that yellow on the second one. But I'm pleased really overall how that looks. The one piece I'd really like a little more definition is that center. And I'm looking at the flower, the photo, and how this has that little bit of a center. And I think I can do that, but I think I need to do that at the end when it's a little more dry as well. So let's scoot over to this guy. We know exactly what we're going to do on the back, the ones that are back, because we just had quite a bit of success with this one. So let's get those in there right away. And I'm thinking, because this is tucked in, this is also going to have a similar, I didn't look for images with buds. I apologize. But I'm going to assume that we're going to have that darker color at the base and then coming out to that lighter color on the edge again. So I've got the V09, we've got the fluorescent violet. We need to do that up here as well. V06. And when it's such small areas like this, I can do 2 or 3 areas at once, which is, it's nice. It makes it go fast. Because my ink is still staying wet. The other thing that's helping with that is working on a glass mat, because I did change over to that. I am finding there's a couple things where I do want paper or an absorbent, something underneath. So when I come upon one of those, I will mention that as I'm recording so you guys know. So I literally am switching back and forth between working on a white absorbent, just regular old copy paper or white paper, and then also my my glass mat. I'm kind of interchanging the two, so I'll let you know when I switch back and forth so you guys know. All right, so the bud I'm pretty content with. We got a little blooper on the side. Tiny bit of colorless blender, just kind of touch on that, push it back in a little bit. We'll see what happens. That would be one area where I might need something absorbent underneath. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my yellows, that lightest yellow, down as much as anything to kind of hold that a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and work in reverse again. So, not that. V09. Going to get real narrow over here to the right because we're seeing that flower at an angle, right? It's not facing flat forward to us. So we're not going to have as near as much on those petals over to that right side because we're barely seeing those petals. Okay, that was my V09. Then I'm going to come back in with the fluorescent, and I want to be careful because I don't want to I want to leave that nice bit of yellow, especially on those bottom ones. So this goes in toward the yellow, goes right up into that darker violet. V06. What I do like about this color combination is they blend incredibly well together. So this is one that even if you've let it sit a little bit, you can come back and re-wet. They blend really easily together. You're not going to need a ton of ink, which is always a bonus. So I think you'll be pleased with this color combination if you have these and want to give it a try. Now, if you do not have that fluorescent, because that would be one that not everybody has kind of sitting in their arsenal of tools, I would try one of those B6s, like a B63 or a B66. That might get you those blue undertones that you're looking for. There's a B79 as well. Just things to think about if you don't have those fluorescents. Sometimes that B6 or B7 can get you some of those kind of vivid blues that still have some violets to them. So I jumped all the way to my Y18. Then I'm coming in with my Y13, and I'm going to start pushing at those violets a little bit. See what we can do movement wise. And if they don't move, this is another time that if we put, and sorry, there's a bunch of stuff going on, you can see how much ink I'm laying down. If I put something absorbent underneath, like a tissue or just even a piece of white paper, we might get it to move a little bit better. So let's do this. Let's grab a piece of paper. This is my Y11, especially on this bottom one, if we can get a couple little kind of keep an eye on the tip of your marker. Most of my lighter markers have a tiny bit of staining on them, but this would be one of those with all of this ink. Because I've got so much, it could do a little bit of staining, and the last thing you want to do is pull those violets into your yellow marker. All right, so I'm gonna let that sit and dry. I missed one little spot right out over here. There we go. So let's work on the greens, and then we might add just a hint of that little shape inside. In fact, we could probably do that now. I'm thinking my favorite BV20 would give me that little hint. So I'm putting this right on top of the yellow. I'm adding these little shapes right in here and that little round center. And I think it's going to work. I have to kind of think about this one over here because it's, again, it's facing away. So, ooh, and it's pretty wet. I might have to do that again here in a second when it's not quite so wet. All right, YG63 and YG03. We'll start with the 03, yellow green. We're going to keep the foliage, the leaves, pretty simple. Once you get down here, it's a little bit faster because you can just kind of run over. And then you can make the decision, do you want the veins to stay lighter or do you want those to get darker? A lot of flowers, or leaves, the veins are actually lighter than the rest of the leaf. And it does vary. I shouldn't say they're all that way, because they are not like anything. There's always some variation. I'm not super concerned about getting this completely smooth because I know I'm going to do at least a layer with some dark and then probably a little bit of blending. But getting kind of that first layer down, and I normally would have opened the chisel or the medium broad nib. Not totally sure why I didn't. And I'm also not completely 100% sure back here in the center what is leaf and what is in between. So we'll just fake it like we know what's going on and go for it. All right, so that's YG03, and then YG63. I am going to leave the vein a little bit lighter, and then we have these amazing ripples. So I'm going to go where it looks like it's dipping kind of downward and get that a little bit darker so that as the leaf comes up and over, that part stays lighter. Give kind of a neat effect. All right. This one doesn't have as much of that, but then we have some of that going on back here. Just trying to show a little bit of that kind of rolling effect. These ones that are back can be a little bit darker. Pushing them back. All right, one more. Here we go. So it's not very precise, purposefully so, but I think it gives some movement to that. I think also we're going to come down kind of one edge of each of these. So I'm going to go down the right hand side with kind of a wiggly wobbly line, because that's what my hand is doing. Be better to turn them so they can run horizontally versus trying to go up and down. Michelle. Okay, back to YG03. I do not need this to be smooth. In fact, I'd prefer it not to be. So I'm going to go right along that edge, kind of circle, and just soften those edges. Now, because I've gone all the way around the leaves, I am going to have to do some going back into that dark area, just so I don't end up with watermark, where you have the dry meeting the wet. And you can blend this out as much as you want. These two colors blend beautifully together. So if you'd like it to be a smoother blend, kind of slick, shiny, you absolutely can do that with these colors. It will get there for you. I do not mind a little bit of roughness, fuzziness to leaves. I am thinking, however, that I want the underside of this one to go dark, just to show the difference, that it's flipped up as much as anything. All right. I'll go back and double check we get most of that on screen. Let's do this little bit of this BV20, which is the dull lavender. Into that yellow. There we go. And I think because Sandy has already added these dark kind of facets coming out of the center, I don't think I'm going to add any more there. Then I've got a B000, and I really don't want to try to do a lot here, but I feel like we could do a little bit. And you could start with colorless blender and flick into it, or you can just go with the B000 and flick outward. But my goal is going to be to get kind of a regular shape. So not kind of this amorphous outline of my flowers. I'm going to actually go for kind of an oval or an elliptical shape. Question's going to be how big. I'm not totally sure. And I am hitting the leaves a couple times here. I'm not being very careful but that blue, because it's so light, it's not making a huge mess of that. So I think it's going to be up to you to decide if you want to put a background, how far to go out. I feel like this needs more of a like here. I should have done this a little bit better before I started, just so I have that shape. One of the things I showed in Copic College is we used a stencil to kind of find a pleasing shape and use that to give ourselves some guidelines versus trying to just aim at a shape like what I'm doing. Not necessarily a great idea, but I'm closer now. The center little pieces are actually easy because we're just filling those in. We don't need to try to flick and figure out how to smooth that out or fade that to white, which is nice. So that's good. Bonus there. And I've got some stuff that's on the back of the card that was printed already on the back of the card kind of showing through, and that will not show through once it's dry. I definitely reuse paper if I can. And this is one of those that is getting repurposed. The other side of the paper is still just fine. All right, I think I need to call it quits here pretty quick, or I'm going to make a mess. All right. Colorless blender if you want to soften that edge. It's all pretty wet, so I'm going to go back in a little bit into the blue, but I don't need to go very far. I'm not going to create one of those watermarks, or I shouldn't, because I'm getting to it quick enough. So I will let that dry, kind of see where that lands me. Oh yeah. How pretty is that? Brighten that up. A pansy from 3 Room Studio. Sandy, thank you very much. You guys, if you have any questions, put those in the comment section below. If you enjoyed and learned, please like the video. If you have not, please subscribe to the channel. And also, I've just started talking about this, but even if you can't sit and watch the whole video through, I would love and appreciate if you would let a few of these run through to the end. Trying to make sure I can make ends meet at my end and pay for the crafty goodness I am sharing with all of you. Everybody out there, have a happy, colorful day.